Zenitsu vs Kaigaku is the single most raw and satisfying 1v1 in all of Demon Slayer. I'm even putting it above Yoriichi vs Muzan. And you may be wondering, why? Well, let's talk about it. Before we dive into their fight, we should take a quick look at their backstory to understand what makes this clash so great. Both Zenitsu and Kaigaku were cowards who trained under the same master. But man, they could not have been more different. Kaigaku was an orphan who survived by stealing food, doing whatever it took to keep himself alive. He even went so far as to let a demon into Yeomei's temple just to save his own skin, an act that got 7 other kids killed. Then you have Zenitsu, another orphan, but the opposite kind of coward. This guy was constantly taken advantage of. He had 7 ex-girlfriends who used him for his money and left him buried in debt. In today's currency, that debt would have been around 600,000 yen, which is a little over $4,000. That's when Jigoro, the former Thunder Hashira, stepped in. He paid off Zenitsu's debt and took him in as a student, becoming the Gramps Zenitsu would cling to. And that's the real contrast between Jigoro's 2 disciples. Kaigaku's cowardice made him betray others to survive, while Zenitsu's cowardice made him cling to others, desperate not to be left behind. Now, here's where the real beef really starts. Kaigaku was obsessed with being the sole successor to Jigoro, the next Thunder Hashira, but Jigoro wanted both Zenitsu and Kaigaku to inherit the title because neither of them could learn all 6 forms of thunder breathing. Kaigaku had mastered every single form, except for the most basic one, Thunderclap and Flash. Zenitsu, on the other hand, could only do that one form, but he did it with pure perfection. It's such a brilliant detail that shows just how opposite they truly were. Kaigaku's pride and arrogance kept him from building a solid foundation. His inability to learn the most basic form just proves that he was all flash and no substance. But Zenitsu, who valued loyalty, took that one form and refined it until it became unstoppable. Now, as you can imagine, for a narcissist like Kaigaku, the thought of sharing that glory with someone he saw as a weakling was nothing short of insulting. He constantly berated Zenitsu, told him to quit, and even lost his temper when Zenitsu called their master Gramps. The level of disrespect was insane. Even with all of Kaigaku's awful behavior, Zenitsu still admired him and dreamed of fighting alongside him. He even went so far as to create his very own 7th form of thunder breathing with that dream in mind. But the tragic irony is that the only time Zenitsu ever uses this form in the entire manga is against Kaigaku. Before we go any further, I want to take a second to introduce today's video partner, NordVPN. One of the biggest mistakes people make online is trusting random public Wi-Fi. You might be at a cafe, an airport, or anywhere else, and hackers can secretly slip in between you and the site you're visiting. That means while you're casually browsing, they could be harvesting your passwords, bank info, and anything else you type in. That's where NordVPN comes in. By encrypting your traffic, NordVPN makes sure nobody can sneak in and mess with your connection. And on top of keeping you safe, NordVPN also lets you connect to servers all over the world, which means you can watch shows and anime on streaming platforms that aren't available in your region. That's why I'm so excited to share NordVPN's exclusive creator deal, which is the best deal you can get from creators like me. If you purchase a 2-year plan, you'll get 4 extra months on top. That's a lot of extra protection. You can grab this exclusive deal by visiting the link in my description, nordvpn.com/SenshiSquad. One NordVPN account can protect up to 10 devices, and if you don't like the product, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, which means you can get your money back within 30 days of purchase. So once again, go to my link in the description, nordvpn.com/SenshiSquad, to get the best deal. And thank you to NordVPN for partnering with me on this video. Anyway, both Zenitsu and Kaigaku eventually became Demon Slayers, and then one night, Kaigaku is out on a mission when he comes face to face with none other than Kokushibo, Upper Moon 1. What happens next has to be one of the top 2 worst betrayals in all of Demon Slayer. Kokushibo must have seen something of himself in Kaigaku, because instead of killing him, he offered him the chance to become a demon. And, well, Kaigaku betrayed his master, the Demon Slayer Corps, and his humanity, as he willingly became a demon. Now just think about Jigoro and all this. The man dedicated his entire retirement to teaching and raising these kids, only to learn that one of them turned to Muzan's side. The heartbreak was unbearable. Jigoro felt like he'd failed so hard that he committed seppuku, ritual suicide, just to take responsibility. And it wasn't some quick death either. He was alone, so no one was there to finish the job mercifully. He just slowly bled to death. No wonder when Zenitsu found out in chapter 135, he locked in. And this was the first time in his life that he locked in, wide awake and fully conscious of what he had to do. And now that we know their history, let's talk about the fight itself. The fight begins in the Infinity Castle, right at the end of chapter 143. Zenitsu and Kaigaku are face to face, and Kaigaku starts with some condescending garbage like he's still Zenitsu's senpai. But Zenitsu, for the first time, shuts him down immediately and reminds him that now that he's a demon, he's no longer his senior. And honestly, Zenitsu might as well be Piccolo here because the aura farming is crazy. He also calls Kaigaku out for acting all proud and being a stopgap upper moon, basically the bottom of the barrel. But that's not to say Zenitsu's completely cold here. He also asks why, as he mentions Jigoro's death. And guys, I feel sick just saying this out loud, but I'm not gonna lie, Kaigaku's response is pure scum. He laughs it off, mocks their master, and says Jigoro was just a senile old geezer who deserved to die for not choosing him as the sole successor. And as he says this, you can practically feel Zenitsu's blood boiling. And then he delivers a line that cuts deeper than any sword. He tells Kaigaku that for all his supposed superiority, Gramps died a miserable death because he wasn't even lucky enough to have a proper successor. This puts both of them on the same level. And for a second, Kaigaku's fake aura cracks. Being compared to Zenitsu drives him insane, and so the battle begins. Kaigaku immediately launches the fourth form of thunder breathing, Distant Thunder. This move lets him perform an arching horizontal slash that shoots out a ball of electricity that sends strong, multi-directional lightning bolts from a distance. And because he's now a demon, it's supercharged with his blood demon art. He literally transforms into a living lightning bolt that aims straight for Zenitsu's heart. But Zenitsu, my man, Zenitsu moves. He sidesteps the initial strike with unbelievable speed, draws his blade in one smooth motion, and slashes Kaigaku's neck as he zips past. Think about that for a second. It's not a clean decapitation, but it's enough for Zenitsu to hit him with trash and too slow. Kaigaku is flabbergasted. He cannot believe Zenitsu, the so-called weakling he always looked down on, could ever pose a threat. He's in denial, and so he copes and tells himself that Zenitsu's still just a human. Kaigaku then decides to flex and show Zenitsu the difference a demon's power makes. He plants his feet and spams all the thunder breathing forms he knows. First up, second form, Rice Spirit. With this, Kaigaku releases 5 arch slashes, each one crackling with lightning in quick succession. Zenitsu dodges, but instead of hitting back, he goes for the verbal jab. You've eaten so many people you can't even tell right from wrong anymore. Kaigaku barks back that he does know right from wrong. Basically, those who acknowledge him are right and everyone else is wrong. He says this while flowing into the third form, Thunder Swarm. This is where Kaigaku rapidly circles Zenitsu and hits him with a series of wide, arched lightning slashes that essentially surround him in a vortex of electricity. Zenitsu deflects some, dodges others, but he's definitely on the defensive because he's getting cuts and burns. Having already used the fourth form earlier, he transitions from his third straight into fifth form, Heat Lightning. He raises his sword and performs an upward slash that unleashes a long-range bolt of lightning directly towards Zenitsu and strikes him from afar. He also grins and tells Zenitsu that thanks to his blood demon art, his attacks slash and burn flesh at the same time. Finally, to cap it off, he goes for the kill with sixth form, Rumble and Flash. This one is just nasty. He releases a series of powerful long-range lightning attacks that strike his opponent from afar. This move is absolutely brutal, and Zenitsu is completely unable to dodge it. He takes the hit full on, gets blown off his feet, and crashes through a huge hole the blast ripped in the floor. Plus, as I said, what makes Kaigaku's thunder breathing even more deadly is how every slash also burns your flesh because of his blood demon art. But this is where Kaigaku's fun comes to an end, as Zenitsu falls and coughs blood, and with a blurry vision, time slows down. This is the classic anime moment, and it's absolute cinema. Zenitsu has a flashback of his memories. He sees his kind, loving Gramps. He remembers training alongside Kaigaku, and how, despite the respect he gave him, it was never enough. He recalls Kaigaku's cruelty, his constant dissatisfaction, and finally, as he apologizes to Gramps, Zenitsu locks in even further. His posture shifts mid-air as he enters a state of total concentration. He kicks off the crumbling wall, and channels every single ounce of strength, breath, and willpower into a single form. Right then, Zenitsu launches his own creation, the seventh form of thunder breathing. Just like that, he strikes Kaigaku like a literal bolt of thunder. The speed is absolutely insane. I mean, it's beyond anything we've seen so far. In a flash, Zenitsu strikes, and before Kaigaku realizes what happened, his head is already separated from his body. Again, the irony here is just insane when you consider that Zenitsu created this form to one day fight alongside Kaigaku. Kaigaku's eyes go wide with pure shock as his head falls through the air. In his final moments, he starts spitting curses at Zenitsu. He's coping and trying to convince himself that even though he's going to die, Zenitsu will fall to his death too, so it's not a complete loss. But then our boy Yushiro enters the chat and drops one of the coldest, most perfect burns in the entire series. Dying alone sure is pathetic. He then saves Zenitsu from the fall, while Kaigaku's head crumbles to dust before it even hits the ground. And man, it's so satisfying. His death is poetic, ironic, and pathetic all at once. Poetic because the weakling he mocked endlessly is the one who cut him down. Ironic because every cowardly choice he made to save himself led him straight to this lonely end. And it's pathetic because for all his pride, all his talk of strength, in the end, there was no one by his side. Just dust in the wind and then silence. Good riddance, honestly. Then, as Zenitsu lies unconscious, we're taken into his inner world. He finds himself standing before Jigoro, and the dam breaks. He cries and starts pouring out every ounce of guilt he's been carrying. He apologizes for not getting along with Kaigaku. He apologizes for never being able to repay Gramps. He apologizes for not becoming a Hashira while Jigoro is still alive. Through his tears, he asks the question that's haunted him. Does Gramps hate me now? And then Jigoro, with tears in his eyes, says the most beautiful words possible in that moment. Zenitsu, you are my pride and joy. I'm not gonna lie, I got choked up right there. Zenitsu breaks down, but these tears aren't of guilt anymore. They're tears of pure catharsis, of finally being seen, accepted, and loved for exactly who he is. And just like that, the vision fades. Still, it's crazy that Zenitsu actually managed to mid-diff an Upper Moon all by himself. The only other person to solo an Upper Moon was Muichiro, but unlike him, Zenitsu pulled it off without even awakening a Demon Slayer mark. Though Yushiro does point out that if this fight had happened just 1 year later, Zenitsu would have been cooked, because Kaigaku's demon powers would have been way too mature. Overall, Zenitsu vs Kaigaku was peak battle shonen. The setup, the personal stakes, the backstory, it all builds to this incredibly emotional climax. The action is hype and full of aura and flashy thunder-breathing forms, but it's the raw emotional core that really hits you. Now, if you like this breakdown, smash that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you enjoyed the most about Zenitsu vs Kaigaku. And we're just getting started. This is the first video in our Infinity Castle fight series, where we cover all 7 fights one by one. Next up, it's Shinobu vs Doma. You're not gonna want to miss that one. Click on this video where I explain the entire life of Muzan Kibutsuji.